As women, we're very good at making sure everybody else is taken care of and kind of pushing through like the 9 to 5 schedule of just pushing through because that's what we're supposed to be doing. But a lot of times we neglect our own need to rest or to go slower, and we feel a need to constantly perform. And ultimately, our bodies are not designed to do that. A lot of times we're scared or hesitant to tell our story. But when you're an entrepreneur and you're building a business that is based around healing and having that connection, you need to have your story come through and to share. That's why, like, I share with my clients, this is how I came up with cycle syncing. This is why it's important to kind of look at that mind body connection when you're going into your business, because this is a tool that can help you in this way. We hear it all the time, but the comparison game and kind of getting into that trap of what is everybody else doing and what should I be doing right now, or even trying to break that 9 to 5 mindset of exchanging time for money and having to be doing certain things at certain times. And I think that's pretty inspiring for people too, to just be like, I can do this on my own and like I can take my power back. And I think entrepreneurship is a spiritual journey, and it's really about like kind of coming into yourself and understanding the power that you have again and kind of living with your business to help support you to get to that full potential.
So tell me a little bit about what you do and the type of people that you serve.
Yeah, so I'll kind of go back, I guess, to the beginning of like my background and how that kind of led me to here, because I think it puts all the pieces together and makes a little bit more sense. So I have a background in graphic design, in marketing. I've worked in a lot of different areas from the corporate world, I did corporate merchandising for a while and global gifting strategy and different things like that. A few years, about like 5 years into that, I was like, is this it? Like I'm just here. It's kind of like Groundhog Day. So I started to kind of dabble in different areas, all within marketing, but stepping out into smaller business, doing some freelance work. I did events and weddings for a while. So that kind of gives me a very well-rounded background within marketing. But I still felt like something was missing through that journey. And I wound up getting to the point where I was trying so many different things, I think trying to put all the pieces together, and I wound up burning myself out just from doing like weddings on nights and weekends and doing another job with marketing during the day. So that led me on a holistic journey, myself through healthcare with a functional doctor, and found out that I had adrenal fatigue and my hormones went completely postmenopausal by the time I was 27. So I went on that whole journey of what does this mean? How can I rebalance myself? How can I kind of get my power back? And I did that holistically. And that led me to things like cycle syncing and human design and astrology, and really kind of a self discovery journey that led me to here today. And I was like, more women need this in their lives. So I have a couple different iterations of the program that I've done that start with just like cycle syncing and what does that mean and how can that help you within your business. And then I've brought in different components of the human design and astrology to really help you to make yourself the strategy in how you're working with your cycle, but then also how are you designed to connect with the world and how can you bring that through in your brand and help you to live your full purpose through your business.
You and I are both really passionate about the wellness space.
Mhm.
So tell me a little bit more about your clients.
Yeah, so the type of really it's female entrepreneurs is kind of like my goal. I've worked with people that are photographers. I've worked with people, the majority of the people that I'm have been drawn to the different approach that I have been within the spiritual space or the holistic space. So energetic healing, or I've worked with like hypnosis clients or pelvic floor and health or like chronic health conditions, people that work with that support, massage therapists, different things like that. So a lot of the women that I think have more of that spiritual or holistic side that they use in their own life, but then they're using to help their clients as well. And a lot of times I think they kind of felt the same thing that I was feeling when I was in the corporate world of where do I start with marketing because this all feels icky. And as women in general, so most of my clients are women. Pretty much all of my clients are women. And I think as women, we feel that icky of I don't want to sell to somebody. I don't want to be pushy. I don't want to have that sense of urgency that's pushed on people by using pain points and different things like that. So women that are within a spiritual space focusing on healing, that feels really gross when you're trying to like push that at somebody of like, you need this service because, you don't want to call somebody broken or have these different things impressed on people. And we've had that pushed on us. So a lot of my clients feel that sense of how do I market myself with these traditional marketing tactics in a spiritual space and how can I make that happen? So, but taking a step back and being like, it's not about selling, it's not about pushing. How can I just connect with somebody to help them? Because that's ultimately what their goal is too. That's kind of my target person that I've really loved working with.
I feel like there's really not a lot of great resources for wellness entrepreneurs starting out because when they go to find how do I market my business? Where do I start with finding my brand and promoting that brand? Really haven't been a lot of resources outside of, I love this term, the bro marketing space. Do
Yes.
you feel the same?
Yeah, and I think it all comes back to that is kind of the traditional, I guess, archetype of the person like that. When you look at marketing, it really is that bro marketing of like that's what's out there. That's what had worked in the past. But if you look at this like paradigm shift that we're going into a whole new era that is much more feminine and it's so masculine from everything that we've had before. So I think, bro marketing fits it well and kind of describes that masculine side of things. And I do agree. I think there's all these tactics that are out there, and every tactic I think works for everyone or individuals in particular. Every tactic isn't going to work for everybody. So what works for me is probably not going to be what works for you or the next person. But being able to decipher what works for me and how can I adapt this into my business, I think that's a huge missing piece of building that foundation of, okay, what is my brand and what is that connection point? What is that transformation that I want my clients to see? And kind of painting the picture on a customer journey or these different components that are naturally going to lead you to your people or have your people be connected to you. I feel like that's what's missing. And that's what gets us in that burnout cycle of trying all the different tactics and seeing what works or what doesn't work and going through all of the things that don't work before finding that one thing that feels like it works for you finally and then understanding why does that work for me. So I totally agree, especially in the beginning, that foundational marketing of what is a brand, what is marketing. It's not just posting on social media or kind of having these different aspects that we've grown to see of like, well, I just need to have a social media presence, and that's my marketing. So kind of understanding what all of those different aspects are for sure, I think is a missing piece. And that's where I spend a lot of time helping my clients to build that foundation.
So, what, in your opinion, is the best place to start? Like, where do you start with your clients who may be just starting out, or perhaps they already have a brand, but it's not resonating? What do you do with your clients to kind of get down to that foundational starting point?
It's a great question because I feel like everybody is at a different place. So I kind of take it and initially I'll do like what I call a breakthrough session. And that I combine human design. I'll pull your human design chart and your astrology chart. I like the astrology component for the brand because it really brings out your true values and your core essence. And I'll pull in like the Venus for the different visual aesthetics that feel really good for you. Because what feels really good for you and you're really passionate about, your energy is going to come through that within your brand. And then within human design as well, that I usually take a step back. And a lot of times it's things that you already know about yourself, where it's like, oh, yeah, I do have that skill or that strength. But it's looking at it from the perspective of, that is my core gift. That is my strength. And I don't need to be in this other place or kind of pretending to be somebody else by doing these other tactics just because I feel like I should be doing it. So it's breaking those tactics down and understanding how am I designed to connect and where am I in alignment and where am I not in alignment. So I do that breakthrough session first, to really understand and get you back to who am I on a core level? And that really is the key to going forward. And then I'll take a look at your brand and marketing. I call it like a brand energy audit. So it's where are you in alignment with your energetics and your design, and where are we out of alignment, and kind of see where we have room to grow or what kind of strategy we want going forward. So I always think that's kind of taking inventory of yourself and then inventory of what your business is and what are you co-creating. Because the other thing is your business, a lot of people start to identify themselves as their business. Like it's a one thing. And finding that separation of how can I co-create with my business that is this other entity. It's like a child almost versus it being you. It's an extension of you, but you have an identity outside of that as well. So how can we co-create with your business without it kind of engulfing where you're at, in life as well, to find that balance?
I love that you do human design because it is something that was not on my radar at all like a year ago. And then all of a sudden it just started. I see it everywhere now. And I would love for you to talk a little bit more. And it's a big egg to crack. So we don't have to go super deep into human design, but can you give me just like a really basic overview so that people can understand how important it is to understand your own energetic blueprint so that you can basically harmonize your frequency that you're putting out there into the world through your brand?
Yeah, it is huge. And I like to say that going into any of the conversations that I have, because some of my clients have, well, a lot of them have maybe heard of it or they've like never really looked into it. And once you get into it, it's like it is like a rabbit hole that you can get sucked down. And there's so many different levels that you can get into. So I like to start by saying you don't have to use each and every piece to it, but it is a great foundational start to kind of get into those core different levels. So what it is like when you first look at your chart, there's a lot of different shapes and numbers and symbols. It brings in elements of astrology. It brings in elements of like the chakra system and the different energy centers that you have. And each one of us has a different combination of defined centers and undefined centers and gates, which I like to call the gifts. Like those are kind of your core gifts, the ones that you have defined within you and your design and your chart. So there's these different elements that all make up, we all have a different combination of all of these different things that are within your chart. And like you said, it gives you a blueprint of how am I designed to work? If I have a defined throat center, I'm really good at communicating versus if it's undefined, that might be something that I struggle with. Or for me in particular, like I have an undefined solar plexus. So boundaries are hard for me and I have trouble saying no to certain things. So, like, kind of understanding these different nuances of, oh, that's just something that I need to be aware of like, I'm very empathetic of certain things. So, and I can feel other people's energies and things like that. And this is where I need to protect myself, or this is how I can strategize going forward in life, but then also within your business. How can I use this to my advantage with my messaging? So, a lot of times I'll pull through like your open centers, for example, like the boundaries example I just gave because that's an open center for me, I can relate to people who have also struggled with that. And I can help them to paint the picture of like, I've been through this, and these are some tools that I've used, and I can help to coach them through those different things. So, using that within their messaging is key to touch on those points with somebody without it being a pain point, to just be like, hey, I've been in your shoes. These are some tools that I've used to help, or kind of condensing those different things. And then your incarnation cross also shows you like your life purpose. So I like to pull that through because it's your four core gifts that represent kind of like your core values, your core essence. And I'll use that for you to understand who you are, and then how can you use those gifts within creating an offer. Maybe your offer is an amazing offer, but it's something that's not utilizing your core strengths, or something is a little bit off. So I'll help them to tweak that, or even to just tweak the messaging so that it's like, this is the transformation that you are actually designed to help people achieve. It's like tweaking those different little things to make it feel aligned and authentic to you, because a lot of times we'll get into our head, or we'll start to see all of these things on social media or different all marketing tactics and different offers that other people have. And that gets us away from what is our true value, what is our true purpose, and how can we live into that. And then the other piece that I like to kind of help people through when we're looking at the signature offer piece is, where are we playing too small? Because a lot of times my clients come to me because they're in a transition, or they're kind of starting something new or wanting to add something into their business. And so they've been doing things for a while, and it maybe it worked in the beginning, it's not working anymore, kind of figuring out where that is, but looking at those core gifts of like, hey, you might be playing too small in this area. How can we tweak that and really amp up what that looks like? Whether that's bringing in a collaboration with somebody, if you have like a split definition, or maybe you're doing more things that are just like posting on social media versus actually having conversations and connecting with people, depending on your profile, and different things like that. So, utilizing each of these components to optimize what feels really authentic to you, and how can we kind of decode that and break it down in a way that feels more simplified and just more authentic, because when you're within that space, it just becomes so much easier.
Yeah, I think what's kind of hard for people to understand is that, your efforts are like dropping a pebble into a pond. It's going to make ripples. You might see clients and leads and productivity from your efforts, even if they're not in alignment for you. And so I think that that's what gets really confusing for folks, is because they will keep hammering that strategy. They'll keep attempting that tactic, because they did get some sales from it or they did get some traction. But if it's not in alignment for you, those ripples are really only going to be so effective. And when you can make an impact that is in alignment with your values, with the way that you communicate, and that is really in harmony with the type of impact that you want to make in the world, that ripple becomes like a boulder in the pond. You know, you're making an impact that is just so much more far reaching and truly connects on a frequency level with the type of clients that are going to be resonating with that.
And I think that's a great point too, because a lot of times, especially when you're starting out or you're kind of trying something new and you're going in a different direction, we look for those easy wins or those quick wins where it's like, yes, I got a client, or yes, I like sold this one thing, or and you start to, it's almost like a false sense of going in the right direction, but then you're going to start hitting walls or it's going to be a lot harder to go in that direction versus if you do get to that point where you can make that big impact and really reach, I call it your soulmate clients, because like when you hit those people, like that's the ultimate goal, is making that connection with those people that are ready versus the people that you're kind of pulling along the way. And those are the clients that are usually like, it's just a paycheck or it's not really exciting for you at the end of it. And you want to be living in your joy throughout your business and using that as a tool.
Yeah, it's so important to get in touch with kind of how you want to show up in your space.
Yeah. And the impact that you want to make too. And like a lot of times, like you said, the people that are within the spiritual space or the holistic space that are the healers and the light workers, we just want to help. But a lot of times it is hard because we don't want to market ourselves or we don't want to push ourselves. And there is that resistance that comes up then because we don't want to be that person that we've dealt with in the past, or that salesperson that has come at us like, oh, you need this thing. So it does become tricky. And I think the other component to that, coming from the corporate space, and you've probably felt this too, and you probably see it with your clients, is a lot of times we're scared or hesitant to tell our story. But when you're an entrepreneur and you're building a business that is based around healing and having that connection, you need to have you need to be a part of that, and like you need to have your story come through and to share. That's why like I share with my clients, this is how I came up with cycle syncing. This is why it's important to kind of look at that mind body connection when you're going into your business, because this is a tool that can help you in this way. Not to say like, oh, this is what I did, so you guys all need this thing, and not to push it that way, but it's just as like you're having that genuine connection. And when you're within a spiritual or holistic space, that's something where I want to know who I'm interacting with when I'm going into these deep levels and having these deep conversations and building this. I want to understand who that person is on the other side.
What kind of advice would you give to somebody who's trying to find their authenticity so that they can attract clients that are in harmony with that resonate?
I think it really just goes, and a lot of times we've been on a healing journey. Like if you have a spiritual business or you're in the holistic space, you've been on a healing journey. Sometimes I've done this myself. I've recognized that I do all of the things, and then I'm just checking a box, but I'm not allowing the time to kind of sink in and really connect with, okay, what does this mean? Where am I holding myself back? And kind of looking at those things. And that's where the human design for me became a tool where I'm very logical. I have the whole Capricorn side. Like I've got a lot of placements in Capricorn and I have this very like structured approach to things, but I also have this intuition that I really didn't understand or connect with until I started going on this healing journey. So allowing yourself to have that mind body connection where you're getting out of your head and just recognizing like, what do I feel in this moment I need, not what does everybody else that's on social media. I know that we hear it all the time, but the comparison game and kind of getting into that trap of what is everybody else doing and what should I be doing right now, or even trying to break that 9 to 5 mindset of exchanging time for money and having to be doing certain things at certain times. Like looking at those different things within your life of where could I be holding myself back, or where am I feeling like I could be playing bigger, or if I'm playing too small, and kind of starting there, because ultimately I think that's the place where the answers start to come when you start to ask those questions, whether it's like journaling or allowing yourself to sit with those kind of conversations of what do I feel like my body needs today? What do I feel like I need to present with something? And understanding too that when you're showing up, from a place of where you feel connected of what you should be sharing versus like, oh my gosh, I feel like I need to post something on social media today, so I'm just going to post something. Like that's not going to be as effective as if you were like, I feel really inspired to share this right now. So knowing that consistency looks different and accepting that it's okay to not just show up just to show up. It's okay. It's more effective if you're showing up in an authentic way. And what do you need to be doing today? And ultimately, that's trusting that, which is hard because it's the unseen thing that you're kind of trusting, but trusting that that's going to lead you in the right direction. So I guess getting to that point of starting on that self-discovery and asking those questions, and maybe even looking at the connection points within like a human design or seeing if there's different tools that you use, whether it could be a card pull, it could be different things that you use, and how can you utilize that as a guide for yourself to connect with that intuition.
And something you said earlier that I never realized was so important, but cycles. And something that you and I talked about was how women have this beautiful natural cycle that's typically, even like your menstrual cycle, and there's also lunar cycles, but that the world we live in is actually not supportive of those cycles whatsoever. For instance, the 9 to 5 workday where you have to hammer it out for this specific block of time and kind of be in this box of energetic output. So, talk to me a little bit about the importance of cycles, especially when it comes to your creative pursuits with your business.
So I love, I like to call it like our inner season. So it is like our inner cycle. And whether you're cycling or not cycling, as a woman, you still have a cycle. So if you're past the time that you have a menstrual phase, um, you still have that innate ability. And really, what I use it for is to kind of check myself and make sure that I'm giving myself the time to rest. So as women, we're very good at making sure everybody else is taken care of and kind of pushing through like the 9 to 5 schedule of just pushing through because that's what we're supposed to be doing, or pushing through if like you're a mom or you have different things that you're doing at home, making sure everything else is taken care of. But a lot of times we neglect our own need to rest, or to go slower, and we feel a need to constantly perform. And ultimately, our bodies are not designed to do that. Men can do that because men have a 24-hour hormone cycle versus women have a 28-day-ish cycle, depending on how long your cycle is. And that's when it resets. So if you're going for 27 of those days out of the cycle, like come day 28, you're probably going to feel like you need to crash. So when your cycle resets, that's kind of your body's time where it's like, releasing everything that it no longer needs, and kind of giving yourself that time to rest and sit in that cycle. If you're constantly going, you don't have that time to reset. So ultimately down the road, you're going to feel that pressure or that break. So with women having a cycle that's 28 days, we have actually 4 phases. So you have your menstrual phase, your follicular phase, ovulatory phase, and the luteal phase. And your menstrual phase, a lot of people think that's like your whole cycle, is just like when you have your period that week, that's your cycle, and it happened, and next month it's going to happen again, and like that kind of a thing. But ultimately, we have 4 phases of the cycle each month. So menstrual phase is kind of like a wintering phase. So if you think of winter, if you look outside at Mother Nature, it's cold. A lot of times you feel like you want to just rest, relax, retreat, kind of really look at yourself and have that inner reflection time. And that's what your body is naturally designed to do during that phase of your cycle. And then coming out of that, going into the follicular phase, it's more of like a springtime. So I coach my clients through using that time, even within your business and the creative process, like you said, to start planting seeds with people, start having these conversations. Maybe you're adding some comments in on Instagram or throwing some options out there for people to like respond to, whether it's like a poll or different things like that. Kind of starting to share more of those things and plant the seeds for maybe if you have a launch coming up or doing different things like that, writing out captions, kind of planning your content, doing all of that stuff during the springtime. And then the summer cycle or your ovulatory phase, that's kind of like a full moon energy where everything is illuminated. It's the highest energy. That's a great time to do events, show up on a podcast, like do some videos, do your creative content and your work during that time. Because that's when you have the highest energy. That's like when your peak energy happens. And then going into the luteal phase, which is the fall, that's prime time to kind of like start winding down, start closing up loose ends. Maybe you doing the editing or scheduling of your content or putting the different pieces together before going into the menstrual phase where it's more of that reflection of what worked, what didn't work, what should I be releasing, what can I do differently going forward. So you have that reflection time. So all of those different phases are super important within your life and your business to be able to reflect on what's working, what's not working, how can I optimize my time? And ultimately, if you're leaning into what your body is designed to do during that time, you're going to be a lot more effective than if you're trying to do the same thing every day, day in and day out.
God, that is absolutely freaking life changing when it comes to business because there are so many times I'm sure all of us have been like, oh, I got to do this Facebook post and I've got to do this live, and I'm just not feeling it. And it might be because energetically, this is just not in alignment for where you are right now.
Yep. Yeah. And I think that's the thing too. And it's also like we get into a cycle of creative burnout when it's every single day you wake up and you're like, I gotta do a post today, or I gotta do this, I gotta interact, versus if you take the time to kind of have a bucket of stuff that you've done or ideas that are coming through, even if you're just scrolling through Instagram, like just saving those ideas so that when you get to a time where you're like, I feel like I really want to film a video today, like I'm really creative, I'm on top of it, and you can just kind of go back and utilize those different ideas that you had so that you can lean into that energy. And then also feeling like you don't have to show up on that day. If it's like, well, I don't really have anything that I've had planned out, I'm kind of not feeling like showing up today, that's okay too. And just kind of really, I think it's a great tool to start to understand and listen to that intuition again and have that connection with your body. It's like mind, body, soul, and just kind of having that alignment. Once you're in tune with that, I feel like that's where all the answers come, and just allowing yourself to trust that and lean into that and not push through it, which is honestly the hardest thing because that's what we've been taught our whole lives is to just ignore that and just push through.
And then the other component to that is the guilt and the shame and the disappointment that comes with I didn't do that thing that I was supposed to do, or at least you believe you were supposed to do. And it's such a different it's such a different world when you can really honor how you're feeling that day. Like I may have on my calendar that I need to do a video for my website or to promote myself on TikTok. And there are some days where I really just have to honor where I'm at. And so let's talk a little bit about social media because again, this is one of those places where entrepreneurs have been told you should be here, you should be there, and then they beat themselves up when they don't enjoy being on those platforms and it doesn't feel good to them. They get the ick. So can we talk a little bit about the social media component and where to show up and in what capacity?
Yeah, and I think that's a great point that a lot of my clients initially when they come in they're like, "Oh, I'm on this and I'm on this and I'm on this, but I hate Facebook or I hate Instagram," or like they hate one of the things usually of like I'm just on it because I feel like I'm supposed to be on it. And ultimately my advice to them is if you hate doing that, that's going to come through when you're showing up on that platform. So ultimately that's not where you need to be. If it feels out of alignment, it's probably out of alignment. And there's always a better way that feels more aligned, whether that is different ways of networking or different connections or different platforms or whatever that might be. There's always a way that's going to feel aligned. And it's just about finding those pieces. And I also look at, okay, who is that target person? So that's another foundational piece that I think gets overlooked sometimes of like talking about niche marketing, even people feel like it's counterproductive when you're talking to a niche market, or if you're identifying that one person that you're talking to, it feels counterproductive because you feel like you're making your pool a lot smaller. But ultimately, you are just narrowing the focus so that in all of the noise, that person can find you. So, really identifying who your person is. And a lot of times, that person is who you were a few steps back, whether that's a year ago or 2 years ago or whatever that might be, 6 months ago, that person has elements of you because they're going to connect and resonate with what you're saying and that transformation that you're helping them paint. So going back to who is that person? Who am I talking to? I even go as far as like, let's take a picture off of online and make a profile for them for you that like you can look at when you're writing your content. So you're talking to them. And then when you look at the platforms, who is this person? Where are they showing up authentically? Because if they're not on TikTok and you're showing up on TikTok, you're missing out because your person isn't on that platform. So not feeling like you have to spread yourself so thin and be on all of the different platforms, but be more strategic about it and meet them where they're already at. So if that person is a female that's in their like 20s to 40 or something like that, they're probably on like Instagram, Pinterest, they might be on TikTok, they might be um, on Facebook. A lot of times it's more of like the older groups that are on Facebook, depending on the generation and what you're looking to market, but just kind of looking at those different platforms and where is that person already so that you can show up and ultimately connect with them a lot easier because that's where they're already looking.
I think a lot of people think like I have to make this post for Facebook, and then I have to make this thing for Instagram, and then I have to make this pin, and then I have to do this video. You can show up in all the places and you can show up in these avenues where your clients are at, but you can do it in a way that's very refined where you're creating one piece of content and redistributing it across these other places. Can we talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, and I think that ultimately is over time we've made things probably a lot harder than they need to be, where it's like we need to have a different graphic and it needs to show up differently here. And ultimately, each platform is unique in the algorithms like you were talking about, but showing up in a way that feels authentic if it's video for you, for example. If you have a YouTube channel, you can take one long form video, you can split it up and you can even use the audio for the podcast, like kind of like what you're probably doing, use video and then audio, and then you have those two components. That's two platforms right there with long form content. And then you can split that up. There's even like apps that help you to pick out different components of it. And you can probably, out of like a 30-minute video, make like at least 10 or 15 different clips that's like 15 to 20 seconds long at least. And then you have all of those reels that could be a month's worth of content for you. Or doing one graphic that points back to that from Pinterest. Like it can point you back to the video, it can point you back to the podcast, it can point you back to all these different things. So ultimately, narrowing your focus on like, okay, I feel really good when I show up on video. Let me figure out how I can take this video and then split it up. And then you can use that on Instagram, you can use it on Facebook, you can use it on TikTok, you can use it on all these different platforms. And then also, that's going to help you to determine what platforms you show up on as well. Because if you like video, it shows up really well on like TikTok, YouTube, Instagram versus like Facebook can be a little bit more like a long form, or Pinterest even is more of like you can put one graphic that kind of links back to the bigger video. So kind of like determining what platforms feels good for you based off of the type of content that you feel like you really want to work with. Versus if you don't like showing up on video, you can have some B-roll videos that kind of link back to maybe a blog post that you wrote or something like that. Or you can do an individual post that's on Pinterest and Instagram, maybe that's more visual that directs people back to these different platforms. So totally, I'm all for starting with, even if it is like if you really like to write and that's like your long form content or that's what you really feel passionate about, how can you show up and like take one visual that you can then use across like three different platforms or even two or three different pictures, and then you can just use that, you can promote that same piece across the different platforms that get them back to that main point. And then you can, out of one blog post, you can probably, again, make 10 or 15 different posts that kind of take out the different main points that you have, or different clips, different videos, and you can make an email out of it. You can do all kinds of things.
Yeah, and I think once you start seeing it in that way, this one idea really can be disseminated in all these
Mhm.
different ways. And it doesn't necessarily have to cost you a lot of time, money, and energy. Can you talk a little bit about the inexpensive, cheap, or free resources that you use to support your brand?
Yeah, and I think that's a great point too of like to start a business, you can start it pretty much free. Like you can write out different captions, even like ChatGPT's free, or like the Google Gemini. There's all those different AI things that are coming out now that can help you to write, where you can even or even help you to like flesh out the ideas. And from that, even you can make a blog post, you can make an email. Websites, Wix has a free option that you can even publish a website on. There's Notion websites, there's Canva websites. Canva has a free option that you can make all of your graphics on, and there's pre-done templates so that you can just kind of make it your own, which I recommend the majority of my clients use Canva for a lot of those different graphics and things because it makes it so much easier and it takes the pressure off of it. There's platforms for email that's like MailerLite, or there's a couple different ones. I like the Flowdesk. I like because it's like $30 a month, but you can make all your landing pages on it. You can do Like there's no cap on the amount of people that you can use. So really like $30 a month is pretty good. And you can get all of these other free resources plugged into it. So for very low cost or free cost, you can have all of the tools that you need. Social media is also free. Like all of these platforms that you're promoting on YouTube, Instagram, all of these different things are free to connect with all of these people. So I think just understanding that that's a great starting point, and maybe that's where you start. You can do a free link in a bio for your website without having a full website to just kind of get your stuff out there and connect people with your services before you're at the point where you build out a website. There's a lot of options to start for little to no cost with your business and just kind of kick the ball rolling. And I think that's pretty inspiring for people too, to just be like, I can do this on my own and like I can take my power back. And I think entrepreneurship is a spiritual journey, and it's really about like kind of coming into yourself and understanding the power that you have again and kind of living with your business to help support you to get to that full potential.
Yeah, I think the days of I have to have a website are kind of over. Yes, in some capacity, at a certain stage, you will need a website. Absolutely. I'm not saying that that is not a valuable tool. However, I have two clients that are only on social media and they have set up their Instagram as a microsite. They've set up their Facebook almost like a microsite, and they have a link tree that connects it all together. And Linktree is free. And they're doing their video editing in Canva or something like CapCut that is also free.
I think that's a great point of like utilizing Instagram, Facebook. Like those have store platforms built into them. You can use Etsy, that's also free. Like you can sell your different services or products that you have or whatever it could be. And that can serve as your website or a platform to link you back. And then the link trees too. And then the other point that the thought that came up when you were talking initially about your clients come to you because either they don't know where to start with marketing or they just want to hand it off. I have a lot of clients that have come to me too of like, oh, that's great. Can you just do it for me? Of like I just need somebody to post on social media, or they'll come up and ask me that specifically of like, I just don't have time. I'm just gonna have you post on social media for me. And I think that it's important to note that you as an extension of your business have to show up in your business authentically, not to say that you have to do all of the different pieces. And I think once you get to a point where you can hire somebody to help you to automate some of those things, totally go for that. But especially when you're in the point of building a foundation and kind of understanding what those pieces are and how to show up in your business, you ultimately have to be a part of that, because when you are the person that's showing up, you want your content to be authentic. So when you're showing up in videos and you're showing up in a blog post, or maybe it is like you do one of those long form things, whether that's a blog or video or whatever that might be. And then you have a team that kind of helps you put the pieces together. But ultimately, having that content come from you, I feel like is super important. And I don't know if you've seen that in your business too.
Yes, there is such value in showing up. And again, this ties back to that authenticity conversation. But I think that, even I was a little afraid of showing up as me when I first started my business. Like you had said right in the beginning, like some of us are afraid to tell our story because we don't see it as valuable. But I'm telling you right now, if you have been through some stuff, you now have a doctorate degree in that stuff.
Yeah.
You may not think that anyone wants to hear it, but those are the parts that resonate. This is why we connect with certain people. When you find that thread of relatability, that's that connection point for your audience.
Yeah. And I think opening the door to having those conversations and the paradigm that we have been in for forever, which is these big structures and these big corporations where there is that detachment and there is like the masculine side of things. You need masculine structured at some point. So like you need like the link tree or some platform for people to connect with in that process that can help you to automate certain things. There is value to having that, and not to say that you need to be all feminine, but you need to kind of have that put in place as the foundation of what is that structure, what are these tools that I can use from that I can build on, so that you can be more feminine and allow yourself to have that genuine connection and be in the flow and kind of get that inspiration and that creativity and kind of allow your creativity to show. Because I think that's what's been missing, is it's just been so impersonal for so long, and we often are scared. Or I think it brings up the point too, if you're coming from a corporate background like we have, we were never allowed to, or we were always putting somebody else out there. So it feels more comfortable and you're in a comfort zone. when you're doing it for other people and doing client work, even of like building out a website or building out a brand. But when it comes to doing it for yourself, I know for me at least, it's way harder to do it for me sometimes of like, what do I need to say or how am I going to connect with this person? But I can see it so much easier when I'm doing it for somebody else because that's what we've essentially done our whole lives.
Well, and people are done with being sold to, and that is something that is a collective shift in the energy. I can tell you, not just in my marketing clients, because I kind of have my foot in two pools. I do hypnosis for spiritual reasons, but I also do hypnosis for marketing. And I can tell you from both pools, what I see is like people are starting to have incredibly heightened discernment. Their intuition is much better,
Mhm.
and their BS detectors are like on fire. And so the value of putting yourself out there, your authentic story is also it's also allowing you to really connect with people in a way that they will appreciate because they're so done with these big corporations manipulating their emotions, manipulating their insecurities,
Yeah.
and being sold to. So like, can we talk a little bit about selling and kind of the energy around that? Because I don't know that people really know how to sell because for however many decades we've been taught a paradigm of how to sell.
Well, and I think it all comes back to the conversation of the genuine connection. So like going into it not posting on social media because you're trying to sell to somebody, but it's you're adding value and understanding and being rooted in your own value of, okay, this is what I've been through. This is what I've done. This is this package that I kind of put together. How can I help other people through what I've just been through? And especially when you're coming from the spiritual space or a healing space or doing any work that is that point of it, it's how can I make a genuine connection to support this person? And ultimately, when you do that and you're doing it out of service and doing it because that's what that lights you up, like when you're in that place, that's where the abundance comes in. And I think it's a total mindset shift from where it was coming before of like, oh, I have to sell something. So we get this almost resistance or a block when you go into a conversation with somebody, even if it's just like a free discovery call or something like that, where like we freeze up or we kind of push ourselves back and hesitate because we don't want to be that person that's pushy or salesy. When in reality, if we just showed up and actually genuinely helped that person through with whatever they're needing support in, that's where the sale comes from. So I really think it all goes back to that genuine connection of I want to do this because it lights me up, because it's supporting other people and being of service, especially when you're in that healing space, which I think a lot of times we come from that space anyway, but also understanding that you have a value too, and giving yourself that too. Because on the other side of that, I think it comes into I know we've had this conversation before, but what do I charge for my services, or how can I put a value on something that is this intangible service that people are getting from me or this intangible transformation that they're getting? How do you price that kind of a thing, which is always a hard conversation. And I think that that is a constant evolution, because when you start out, you're going to be at one place and it's going to have certain components to it. And as you expand and grow, that ultimately is going to evolve as well. So understanding the balance of knowing your value and then what value are you providing to other people and then having that connection point.
Yes, I'm so glad we landed here because I wanted to have the conversation about pricing, and I have this girlfriend of mine who does hypnotherapy for me and I do marketing for her. It's a really beautiful energetic exchange. And we just had this conversation about her pricing her services too low. It's so uncomfortable to kind of put yourself at this price point where you feel like you might be excluding the you that was helped a few years ago. You feel
Yeah.
like you are closing the doors on a portion of the population that needs your help. And so there's this desire to serve, but there's also this like, I don't want to leave anyone out if I price myself too high. Do you see the same thing with your clients?
Yes. Yeah. All the time. And I think again, I work with the majority women and I feel like with women it's a lot more prominent because we're having these conversations of like, I don't want to push it too far, or I don't want to do this too much. And I just had this conversation with a friend yesterday who I was helping her. She does craniosacral therapy and five rhythms, and she has a lot of really cool stuff that she's doing. But she was like ultimately having a block because she was like, well, if I do that this way, then I need to go into debt this way, or I need to do this differently. And I'm like, but what if you did this piece first? What if you made a retreat out of this? You could make 10K and then you could pay for this service, which helps those other people. So it's kind of just like a mindset shift of how can you have even different levels of offers where there's like an entry level that's not as high touch for you, or if it's a mini course or different things that can give them the pieces, or even the free content that you're posting online that can be educational and it can add value to their lives. Like you're you also need to support yourself and where you're coming from, and you're going to be evolving. So that person that you're helping is going to be ultimately evolving, and kind of just painting a journey that can lead them to be where they can afford your services, or at least get something out of what you're posting online. And then knowing that you can't help everybody as well. So I think that goes back to the niche conversation too of your target person is a very specific person. And if you're casting a net to everybody, ultimately you're not helping anybody because you're not in your zone of genius. So kind of like leaning on that. And then the other piece that I kind of use to kind of paint that picture to help people to understand that sometimes is, I think we talked about this. I had this like vision of like this bridge. So like you have crossed essentially the river of change and you're on the other side. Your business that you've built, or the offer, the program, whatever it is that you've built to support people, is the bridge. But your marketing and kind of these connection points are trail markers that are leading your people to the point where they can cross that bridge, or you can take them across that bridge. But if they're 2 miles back and they're not at the bridge yet, like they're not able to achieve the full transformation that you are helping people to achieve. So it's kind of helping to lead them through that point, whether it's small, low ticket offers or the free content that you're posting online, or a free guide or mini courses or whatever that might be. That's not your full signature offer. All of those things can ultimately help people along the way.
I think that's a beautiful strategy. And having those levels of attainability, like you said, like, have a free offer, then have something that's kind of like an inexpensive offer, and then have something that's like more of an investment. I feel like when you bring it back to an energetic exchange
Mhm.
versus thinking of it as how much money am I worth, because traditionally as women, the money conversation is always hard because we have never really been valued for everything that we bring to the table. But you're dictating that conversation. And so you can keep yourself accessible with these lower end offers, but also, and this ties into something else, having that high ticket offer and thinking that someone may not invest in it is ultimately assuming that your client can't afford it. So you're
Yes.
first of all assuming that they are at a particular spot, or that perhaps they wouldn't save up for that or invest in that. And I'm telling you, people, if they find it important, they will invest in it, whether they have to save up for it or whether they have to cut back on some other luxury or whatever. If they really believe that it is going to be transformational for them, they will find a way. But you also have to believe that that
Yeah.
transformation is valuable enough to price it at that level, and to assume so much about your client. You're really disempowering them, and you're
Yeah.
also devaluing yourself.
Yeah. And I think that's an amazing point too, because I've had that conversation a lot recently as well, where it comes through in your messaging. And then when you're even presenting the offer of like, you have to feel good about what you're, that energetic exchange that you're putting on that offer as well. So like, you have to feel comfortable. You can't price it completely out of the range where you are capable of holding that value as well, because that's not going to feel good for you. But you ultimately are saying that your person can't afford this and you're kind of putting that down. Or if you're continually cutting the prices that you have, or giving discounts, or kind of undercutting yourself to get to that point, it's all the same thing energetically, is you are saying that this person doesn't understand that. Or if you have to over explain, which sometimes can be it's kind of like the same thing. If you're over explaining your services, you're kind of saying that your people don't understand what it is that you're offering versus painting like the picture of the transformation versus understanding what all happens during like a hypnotist session or different things like that, or a craniosacral session. Because I had one with my friend recently and it is really hard to explain. But like when you're painting the picture and you're trying to explain those things, you are devaluing that transformation that you have and you're devaluing your customer when you price it at that level as well. So that's a amazing point that we don't often think about.
How do you feel about like how often should people be evaluating their pricing structure and perhaps going up a little bit as they grow their business?
I think it kind of depends on the offer that you're doing. And then I know for me, like I've had I think I mentioned in the beginning, a lot of different iterations. So I started where it was just like, let's focus on a marketing strategy that aligns with your cycle. But then I started adding in different components of the human design and astrology. So I tried that out a little bit with one or two people that I was already working with. And then I essentially evolved that offer. So if you're adding on different things or you're evolving, and that happens probably every at least 6 months, to kind of look at that evaluation and say, okay, I've added in these different things, I've mastered these skills, I have these achievements under my belt. It's time for me to up level. And I think that's kind of just taking the power back into your own hands of like, it's time for me to give myself a raise and give myself a checkpoint too of like at least I would say at least every 6 months of having a checkpoint at like energetically of how is my pricing feeling? Am I feeling comfortable with it? Am I taking on too many clients or enough clients? Or if my income goal is 10K a month and I'm making 5K a month, how can I bridge that gap or how can I add different things in? So I think looking at your goals and really understanding what is the want and needs that you have and kind of finding that balance between those things, while also feeling comfortable and confident with the pricing and not going too sky high and not just doing it because it's 6 months and I feel like I should do it. But if it's like 12 months when you feel better about it, increase it at 12 months. So kind of just looking at where you're at as far as your goals shifting, the evolution of your program. Are you changing up different things? Are you wanting to add in another offer that might be able to supplement the income, or where are you at within your business from each of those points?
And understanding that your business is like this living, breathing thing that will change and
Yeah.
honoring its journey as well. Like I used to beat myself up so bad because I could see where I wanted to go, but I just wasn't there yet. And I had to get really comfortable with like, this is where I'm at. But like you said, like maybe doing an evaluation at 6 months and saying, okay, what can I incorporate to bring more value, or what can I adjust to enhance my relationship with my clients? And I think that people also make the mistake of focusing so much on new leads and
Yeah.
not cultivating their existing client base. And I'll tell you this from corporate America, your existing clients, the people that are already a part of your brand and have purchased from you or follow you, nurturing those relationships can be incredibly profitable, but can
Mhm.
also really support your growth as a creator, as an entrepreneur, because they're like your cheerleaders.
Yeah.
They're already like in your corner, and I don't think that people realize like how valuable it can be to really nurture that existing client base, but finding ways to really take care of your people, I feel like just makes sense on so many different levels.
It does, and like you said, it's adding value, and it could be something where you are adding some things. So like I think Black Friday is a good example of like a lot of people just feeling like I have to have a sale because it's Black Friday and I have to discount my stuff. But you could do like a buy one, get one session, or you could do something where it's the bring a friend offer, or like I'm doing a 12 days of Christmas kind of a special where I'm not giving away things for free. I have a couple new freebies that I'm putting out there, but then I'm also like doing offers like you're talking about of like bringing a friend and nurturing that. And I think going back to the foundations of marketing and that structure of we see these funnels and a lot of times that leaves it ends once they convert into a client. But ultimately there's another step after that where it's almost like an hourglass where it goes back into how can I pour back into that client base. And I see that a lot because well, especially because in human design, I'm a 4/6, which means that my network is my net worth. So like really nurturing the network and kind of expanding that and tapping into my clients that have already seen that. And then there's the testimonial component to it. They'll like share a testimonial with people, or they'll share my name of Sam's doing this really cool thing. You should go check it out. Or Leslie's got this nice special coming up. Do you want to come join me for this event that's happening? Um, so I think all of those components, or even if, you're offering a workshop and it's like you bring a friend and you get 50% off, or you get something for free afterwards. I think those are great options to add value.
So tell me, what are some things that you are working on in your specific business, and maybe not even working on, but like some goals that you have as an entrepreneur in this space supporting the wellness community?
Yeah, so the one thing, I know I keep talking about my service is continually evolving, but that I feel like I've been working through a second evolution where going back to my Capricorn, where I'm very like, I like to have things structured. I've had my group program that was very structured of like each week, here's what we're working on, here's the agenda. But I've been feeling a draw to just be a lot more intuitive with the sessions that I've been having. So kind of breaking it down, and the program that I am working on kind of revamping and relaunching come early into next year is going to be more of an intuitive, aligned coaching. So we start with a breakthrough session that looks at your human design and astrology as a foundation to kind of look at where you're playing too small and kind of lean in more into that side of how can your business be a tool and a platform that can support you in building your purpose. And what does that look like in the support that you need to get there? So really I only have like the first two sessions planned out, and then it's like after that for the next couple of months it's just intuitively what do you need. That comes with some creative support from my side of a certain number of creative hours where I'll help you to build out sales pages or websites or messaging or branding, whatever it might be that you need. But then also coaching along the way of how can we optimize what you're doing this month, or kind of work this messaging in and stop playing small and kind of expand or add events or shift up your offers or whatever that might be. So that's kind of the evolution of the group program that I had, and it's a hybrid program. So everybody that's going through the one-to-one with me also has access to some group coaching side of things, where like once a month we'll hop on and we'll do connections with other entrepreneurs and building that collaborative collective. But I know we've talked about doing some really fun things coming up with some exciting events happening next year collaboratively, which I'm really, really excited about doing too, because I've been really drawn to that more collective space in the events and having that collaboration. I really think that's where we're going in supporting ourselves, but then also supporting each other along the way to help collectively us rise. Because I think we've talked about this too with this paradigm shift. There's a need for the people who have been going through spiritual awakenings and spiritual journeys and that have kind of brought that into the world and kind of bringing it into a 3D space like we're doing, where you have the marketing side of things and that tactical piece, but we're doing it in a very spiritual way with hypnosis like you do, or human design and astrology, and kind of tapping into this stuff and merging the spiritual world with the 3D world, I feel like is what's coming up.
I think that you and I have this passion to just kind of take the blinders off for people,
Mhm.
simplify it. It doesn't have to be a struggle to market your brand. It doesn't have to be this overcomplicated, messy ordeal. It can really be simple and fun and feel good and bring you the right kinds of clients that value you and therefore profitable, but in a way that doesn't feel icky. Like it can really be this beautiful experience running your business.
Yeah. And I think it really is. It is taking those blinders off and then also taking away the shoulds and the hows and like how am I going to get this done? And a lot of it I think just goes back to that inner knowing and that intuition and being able to trust it. And entrepreneurship is a whole game of jump and see where the net appears. And so having other people that are going through that journey and other women that have the same passion and the same struggles that they've been going through and how are they overcoming that, and kind of having these conversations on a more open level and being able to support each other in rising and not tearing each other down and being competition, but having those exchanges or having those connections where we can exchange services with one another, exchange just our wisdom from what we've been through and our different journeys and kind of building that sense of community again that has been so torn down, I think is so, so powerful and important going into the next phase.
Our journeys are all so unique, and that's what we share. Like it's such a paradox. It's like the things that make us so different, that is what binds us together. And I think that, like you said, like tearing each other down, like I see a lot of this, like looking at what other people are doing and feeling like it's not enough and comparing ourselves. And your journey is going to be completely different. There are no shoulds. Just like you said, like finding intuitively where you're meant to be is such a beautiful reveal. Like it is life changing for people.
Yeah. And I think that's a good point too of like even looking at human design or looking at like energetically who you are, you're not in competition with anybody else because nobody else has the same combination of what you've been through, or that same imprint or the same blueprint. Like everybody is so different and there's different energy types, there's different skill sets, there's every experience that you've been through has led you to where you're at today. And ultimately using that to serve yourself and to others to just kind of like take that step in faith is where we need to go. And it's scary and sometimes it's you need to have that community or be able to be like, am I crazy? Or is this actually happening? And to be able to have that sense of I can go to this place and I can do this thing and I can ask this person and I can share these experiences is is something that's it's really powerful.
Well, Sam, you are just a wealth of information, and just your whole frequency of like genuine connection and authenticity. It's just so beautiful. And I've loved this conversation more than and every conversation that we have, like we always get into these flow states of just kind of really finding a lot of harmony. And so if people watching want to reach out to you and connect with you, where can they find you?
I am on Instagram, Pinterest, and Facebook mainly. Also Threads, also on Threads. I really like Threads.
I
um,
have not joined Threads yet. Should I explore this and see if it's a
I
good fit?
So initially, I was very hesitant and I was like, this is a knockoff Twitter. And I did not like Twitter. And I, I feel like going back to like the whole bro marketing thing, it's just the bros on Twitter, is what I kind of felt. But Threads is, to me, it's like a constant stream of just people having these like insights and these connection pieces. And there's a lot of like the spiritual side of things. And I've met some really amazing people on Threads. So I definitely encourage that one. On all of those platforms,
File that away.
yeah, exactly. On all of those different platforms, you can find me at The Way She Was Made, and also at thewaysshewasmade.com. So that is my brand name. I like to bring your story in and all of the different components of you being the strategy and how you were made, and ultimately that's your unique design is how you're going to go forward. So
You couldn't have a more fitting business name. I really, I really think you just hit it out of the park with that. It's
it's
beautiful.
kind of wild because I honestly, when I started my self-care journey, I was like, I kind of want to do a blog because I started doing like fitness things and I was and like sharing different nutritious recipes and like all of this stuff. And I was like, that just was like a line, a piece of a line in a song or something that came through. And I was like, I think that'd be a good name. And now I'm like, this makes so much more sense adding in all of these layers and components. I don't know how it happened, but it did.
Sometimes you don't always know what those pieces are, whatever they be. It may not be your business name. It might be some type of offer that you're
Yeah.
like, wow, I really want to start making shamanic tools.
Yeah.
And then 2 years later, you never know. It might be a big part of your brand.
Yeah, exactly. And just trusting that. And I think that's ultimately, I feel like what it all comes back to is that mind, body, spirit connection and allowing yourself to be and not always do, which I have to keep reminding myself of being is actually the power of like feeling that and seeing that and using these tools like cycle syncing or hypnosis or any of these different things that get you out of your head and into your body, and just trust that.
Yeah, I call that efforting. And it is it is a trap for me because I tend to, especially if I'm working on a creative project of my own, I don't get this way with my other clients. I don't know why it's mine. Maybe it's an insecurity or just like I don't know, but I call that efforting when I get into doership mode. and I'm checking all the boxes, even when I'm tired, even when I'm not feeling creative. I'm like, I have to do this. And so that's beautiful. Yeah. Be, not do,
Yep. That's the theme
as,
for
as
2025. I
Yoda
feel it.
would say.
Exactly.
Well, awesome, Sam. Thank you so much for this conversation. I'm so
Yes.
excited for people to meet you and connect with you. And yeah, it's been beautiful.
Awesome. I'm super excited too. Thanks for having me.